Hi folks, welcome to the Cobb TV studio, and I am here today joined by Melanie Dallas. She's the Interim CEO of the Cobb County Community Services Board, and Kamyrn Rock is right here to my right. We'll get with her and hear her story in just a few minutes. And we're trying to stay socially distanced in this pandemic era. But Melanie, welcome back. We had a conversation a couple weeks ago. I appreciate you talking to us then and talking about the Cobb County Community Services Board, because it's one of those government acronyms why I don't think a lot of people knows what it means.
Right. Thank you so much for having us. Yes, Ross, I'm with the Cobb County Community Service Board, what we also call the CSB. And the CSB is a very important service here in the community. It is the behavioral health safety net, and by that I mean we provide mental illness, substance use, and intellectual developmental disability services for a very underprivileged population, and we really focus on those with low income, Medicaid, those who are uninsured or underinsured. But in addition to that, we also provide as the Behavioral Health Authority, we provide behavioral health expertise in a lot of behavioral health issues that may impact Cobb County. So thanks for having us here today.
Absolutely, and we're here today because September is National Recovery Month, and as you mentioned, that's a big deal for the CSBs. What does that mean to you?
So recovery is pretty much everything that we do. And so when we speak to recovery, it is really about how we help to support individuals enter into a life of recovery. And so when we think about disabilities or those with challenges, whether it's mental illness, substance use, or developmental disabilities, we don't think in terms of a cure. We really think in terms of how do we help individuals make decisions, live their life, a life that is thriving, a life that is fulfilled, a life that helps them in recovery. And so at Cobb County Community Service Board, that's what we do. That is what our business is helping to support individuals in recovery, helping them to gain fulfillment in their life, and to help manage the impact and the symptoms of their illness.
All right, so I want to bring in Kamyrn Rock at this point, because I read your little mini bio here, and when it comes to National Recovery Month, I think that probably has a special meaning for you. Can you kind of explain why that is?
Yeah, so recovery saved my life, not just my life, but my kids' life. I grew up with parents who struggled with addiction and spent 10 years in addiction myself. I felt hopeless. I felt like there was nothing I could do, that was going to be my life forever. Finally, in 2015, I did lose custody of my daughter, which then changed things for me. I made a decision to enter in one of the programs, actually through Cobb Community Service Boards, and I completed that program. And the way that my life has changed is something that I can't put into words. First and foremost, I got my daughter back. She got to come home, and I didn't have to explain to her anymore why she couldn't be with me. I have a career working in the field where I get to help people. You know, I am the woman that I thought that I couldn't be, somebody that I thought was out of my reach. Like, I get up and I do it every single day.
How did you get in touch with CSB? How did you get connected to the CSB?
It was actually through word of mouth. I had a lady that was doing ministry that had told me about the program, and I started asking around, and everybody told me nothing but good things, and I just went up to there. I walked in, and they did my intake, and that was it.
And Melanie, I think that's one of the things we touched on last time we talked, is that you literally can walk in.
You literally
and start
can.
Getting treatment. You
literally can walk in. 1650 County Services Parkway is our main address for walk-in, and what we say is just walk in, tell us that you need the help. Somebody will see you that day. We'll get you connected to the services that you need. We try to make it as easy as possible for folks to access us and to start that journey in their life of recovery.
So the life of recovery, that's what I was going to ask you about next. So they come in, they seek your help, and then how do they go on that journey, that life of recovery?
Well, I can speak to that. Kamyrn can probably speak to that a little bit better. You know, it's interesting because when we speak to recovery, what we're really talking about is how do we start to make decisions that help us to live that fulfilled life. And so as an analogy, if you look at someone who maybe has diabetes and they know what those symptoms are and they know what to do when they start to have those symptoms, or a person who has high blood pressure, they know when it's elevated, what are those things that I do? That's the same way that we try to work with individuals with mental illness, substance use, or intellectual developmental disabilities, is what are those things that might happen that we have to really identify that you're having some symptoms and that you need some more help. So for instance, a person with depression or anxiety may tend to isolate, and that isolation might lead to some really negative thinking that'll impact their life. So how do we help them identify what those symptoms are, identify how to address those, give them some skills, some tools, to approach that in a very different way and then get them connected. What I think of as recovery is really a whole lot about connection. It's about bringing hope to those who may feel hopeless, as Kamyrn had shared, and about bringing that, that sense that there is a possibility. Kamyrn's able to work with individuals. She has that ability to say, I've been there, I've come through it, you can too. And that's a very important aspect of helping individuals into recovery.
So Kamyrn, when you went into CSB, at what point after that did you come to some sort of realization that you were on a road to recovery?
Honestly, it was only probably about 2 or 3 months. I think long enough for me to level out, because it wasn't just, when I went in, I thought it was just about the substances. They taught me more than that. You know, I learned, like she was saying, my triggers. I learned to know when things were getting out of control. I learned the tools to put in place so it didn't happen. You know, we talked about my codependency, my trauma, the self-harm, like all of it. It wasn't just what I thought it was going to be, you know, come in and get clean and go home. Like, they taught me how to live. And because of that, I can now teach my kids.
So you're looking good, you're sounding good. It seems like your life's on a pretty stable platform right now, but does recovery continue?
Yes, of course. I'll have 5 years in December. So I'm always looking for ways to grow, ways to, you know, give back, things to keep doing. And every year it changes a little bit. You know, what was important the first year may not be important in year 5, but it's not something that stops. It's a lifelong journey of continuous recovery.
When Melanie and I talked last time, one of the things I took away from our first conversation was the fact that we're living in some interesting times.
Yes.
We're in a pandemic. There's stuff going on in society. It's hard to watch the news for more than 5 or 10 minutes. In your experience, how much would that be a pressure or burden on someone who may be kind of teetering on the brink of needing help or needing to come into the CSB?
Honestly, I think it could go one of 2 ways. You know, either it's too much out there, so they want to go somewhere else, or they're out there and they're not really paying attention to what's going on. You know, I think it could go either way. It could influence it both ways.
Yeah. And again, we touched on that last time. I mean, these are just hard times to live through.
They're difficult, and they're difficult for everyone. So we may see individuals who haven't previously been challenged outside of a pandemic that are really struggling. We've got a lot of burdens on us right now, whether it's children who are in school or who are attending virtual school. If it's not being able to get out into the community to take care of things that you did in a normal way, or if you're part of an elderly population that feels very isolated. That's been one of the things I'm concerned about, is how isolating this might be. And some of those isolation behaviors can create more symptoms, greater depression, greater anxiety. And so anyone who's feeling like they need assistance, what I would say, whether it's Cobb Community Service Board or somewhere else, reach out if you need help, because recovery is possible and there is hope. And Kamyrn is a great testimony to the fact that there is hope and that recovery is possible.
And in some of the information you had given me prior, it referenced 1 in 5 people will experience a mental health incident in their lifetime. Now, I seem to, in my personal experience, and I was a reporter for many years, I see that number kind of trending up.
Yes.
In recent years, just from experience that I've got. Is that true?
Well, some statistics tell us it's 1 in 4. Some tell us it's 1 in 5, and it kind of depends on which numbers you look at. I would say post-pandemic, we'll probably see that it might even be 1 in 3 because this has been so challenging, and we're starting to hear that the impacts of COVID are a little longer lasting. It might not be that very specific illness which may put some person in the hospital, but there can be longer term effects for those who have been impacted by COVID-19, and we're starting to see some of that also. And I think that most folks are anticipating we will see an increase in the needs. We will also see an increase in a burden within our community service board, because a higher number of folks will be uninsured and will need help. And so we're here to help them and help them enter a life of recovery.
Yeah, and I'm going to ask this to Kamyrn because she's a few years younger than I am. It seems to me that the younger generation now has more pressures on them that may exacerbate some of these problems. Do you think that's true?
I do, because the world is changing so much, honestly, and I think social media has a lot to do with it. You know, keeping up with everybody and everything always being happy and perfect and all this stuff, and then you've got the pressure to go to school and go to college, and it's a lot. It's a lot to deal with.
So how do you adjust yourself to dealing with those external pressures? And you mentioned social media, which is something kind of near and dear to my heart. So how do you push a buffer between you and it, or how do you handle that?
I do, honestly, for me. I have to set boundaries with that, which is something that I learned in treatment. You know, if I'm going to get on, this is what I need to get on, and really being realistic and knowing that what's posted isn't always what's true. And I learned a lot in treatment about, you know, being okay with myself, loving myself, and not comparing myself to others and what it may appear that they have going on.
Yeah, that's a lot of comparing going
Yes.
on lately. One of the things that I took out of some of the information you gave me is the phrase "learning to live in recovery." So, Melanie, what do you think that means, and how can CSB help people do that?
So I think when I think about learning to live in recovery, I think about that process that is a very independent, individual journey for each person. Being able to identify, as Kamyrn has shared, what are some of those things that are personal to me that impact me? What are some of those things that I know are going to really affect me? And it's a lifelong journey. It's not just about something I need to do today, but how do I continue? How do I look at all of those impacts and use everything that I've learned, all of my skills, to address whatever my current situation is? COVID is a great example. A lot of individuals who are living in recovery have used the skills that they've learned over the years to say, okay, now how do I apply that to this new and different situation so that I can continue to have a very fulfilled life and maintain my recovery? And to me, that's what it means to have that life of recovery, and it being a lifelong journey.
And this is something that I think Kamyrn can probably talk about as well, talk to at least, about the peer movement gaining popularity and prominence in the recovery journey. What does that mean? Let's start with you first.
Okay. Well, so that is one of the areas that I think Georgia has been a leader. So for approximately 20 years now, Georgia has led the nation in the peer recovery movement. And what that peer recovery movement has been about is allowing individuals such as Kamyrn with that lived experience to have a voice in what do services look like, what do individuals need, and then how do we make the most of what we have in helping individuals and connecting with them. So being able to use that voice of lived experience as we mention it in working with an individual, say, listen, I've been there, I've done this. You can too, and that's the very thing that gives the person the most hope for recovery.
So are you doing some of that now?
Yeah, and I'm actually a CARES and a CPSAD.
Which means?
Certified Peer Specialist, Addictive Diseases, and then the CARES is Certified Addiction Recovery Empowerment Specialist. And there's something powerful, like she was saying, about me too. So when I was working in a peer position and these girls would come in and they were ready to leave and they're scared, and I could see it all over them, and I could say, hey, I sat on that same bed and cried for 3 days, and I get it. Like, this is where I'm at now, this is what I do, this is what I have. Like, I believe in you. For somebody to say, I've walked where you walked, I stood there, I've been in the dirt, and here I am now, and I believe in you, is something that, you can't put words on. It's incredibly powerful.
And so by doing that, you kind of shape maybe the programs that follow for people.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, Melanie Dallas, Interim CEO of the Cobb Community Services Board, and Kamyrn Rock. Thank you both, ladies, for coming in here and sharing information today. I learned a lot. We're going to put information on the screen again, how you can get in touch with the Cobb Community Services Board. We urge you, if you have any doubt or any thoughts about doing it, you reach out and contact them. Get taken care of what you need to get taken care of. And again, thanks for coming and visit us.
Thank you.